Hi, my name is Keith Nitka. I'm the Battleship Operations Manager. And for today's virtual adventure, we're going to do something a little different. As you can see, I'm in the dental office here on board the battleship. But as a special guest, I have one of the ship's dentists during the last commissioning. This is Dr. Matthew Pommer. He is retired now, right?
I actually had the privilege of serving for 30 years, 15 commands, 11 duty stations, and I am now retired from the Navy, but I failed my first retirement, so I am back working full-time as a contract dentist at the Little Creek Branch Clinic at Boone. Obviously, I didn't do a great job on Keith when I was his dentist here on the Wisconsin, or he wouldn't have to be wearing a mask, hiding the teeth that weren't fixed appropriately. So I'm very appreciative to have this opportunity to see you again and to not have to look at the disaster that I created in your mouth.
Thank you very much.
So COVID does have some benefits, a little awkward as it may seem. No, it's an honor and a privilege to be on this ship again, and this beautiful gray lady. We all hold it near and dear to our hearts. You know, we went to war, 8.5 months over there, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, just coming up on the anniversary of getting back from that.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a wonderful piece of history, and so thrilled that we have other generations, the younger generations, that can come on board and experience it, and maybe even talk to some of us old gray-haired bald fellas so that we can impart on them what it was all about back then.
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing here today for the folks at home that can't come get to see us yet because of COVID. So instead of me telling you about what happened here in dental, the best I can, being a quartermaster on board the ship, we're going to try the actual dentist, where he can tell us a little bit more about what it's like to be a dentist on board a capital ship, a Battleship Wisconsin, and the life thereof.
Yeah. So Keith, let's talk about that a little bit. Back in the day when we were there, Ronald Reagan was looking to get to a 600-ship Navy. That's a lot of sailors on those ships, and that's a lot of teeth in those sailors' mouths. And we like to say that we put the bite in the fleet. As a dental corps officer, we're a support element. We're not the war fighters. We're not the trigger pullers. We're not the aviators, the submariners, or the surface warriors. Like the chaplain corps, and the medical corps, and the nurse corps, the dental corps is there to service the war fighter. So we are the tail. And we try not to wag the dog, because that dog's got the biting part up front. So we're in the back and the tail, making sure that people can do their job. Most of our ships do not have dentists on them. No submarines have dentists on them. No frigates, no destroyers, no cruisers. The large, as you said, capital ships, battleships, had 2 dentists on them during our time frame. Currently, the aircraft carriers have 5 dental officers on board, and our large deck amphibs usually have 1 dentist. When they embark their Marines, the Marines will bring a second dentist onto those platforms. So that puts you in a unique position as a dentist when your battle group gets underway. Because for our sake, we were the battle group, the biggest ship. We didn't have a carrier go out with us. And we had destroyers and we had cruisers. So if there's a dental emergency on those platforms, they're going to be lighting up their helicopter and bringing that sailor over here for us. In Desert Shield, Desert Storm, we did a boatload. That's cute. Yeah. We did a boatload of dentistry on our own ship's company. So 1,600 or so sailors on board to Wisconsin during the 3rd commissioning. And if you do the math on that, you go, okay, most of them had the wisdom teeth out, most of them had 28 teeth, so 1,600 times 28. Math in public is never good, but that's a lot of teeth for job security for me. You know. So during the time period, just during our deployment, so we were on board for until the decommissioning, 2 years for me, but just during our 8-month deployment, saw over 4,000 patients. We did lots and lots of fillings, about 1,500 fillings. We did over 3,000 examinations, and we actually, as the capital ship with the dentist, we provided dental services to 16 other commands, coalition, and our own sailors, our line sweeps. We had an Italian emergency flown over to us, and a lot of the coalition commands. So over 247 patients were seen that were not part of our Wisconsin crew. So it's nice to feel needed. It's nice to be appreciated. Most of my dental life, people start out by saying, "Hey, don't take this personally, but I hate the dentist," which is kind of tough. But when you are needed and you are appreciated, it makes you feel really good. So felt really good about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So, so as a dentist, what you're not a warfighter, you're a dentist. So what was it that drew you to the Navy?
Oh, a great question. And thank you for asking that. I'm a farm boy from Pennsylvania. Literally grew up apple orchard and got up in the morning. The people didn't eat until the animals had been fed and watered, and that was my background. I had the opportunity to serve our country after the country had given me the opportunity to be something more than a farm boy. So I went to college, I worked full time to pay for that, and then I went to dental school. I took out loans, took me 12 years to pay those off, but I had the opportunity, so I felt very strongly that I wanted to give back to the country that gave me the opportunity. The results aren't guaranteed, but the opportunity was there. My fourth year of dental school, I wanted to pay back, so I applied to all 3 branches of the service, and I was accepted by all 3. And the Army said, "Hey man, come join us. We're going to send you to a swamp in Mississippi." Roger that. The Air Force said, "No, come be with us. We're going to send you to this big desert in Nevada." Roger that. And the Navy said, "You want to go to Charleston, South Carolina?" And I said, "Why, yes, I do." There were 2 movies out at the time, Officer and a Gentleman with Richard Gere and Top Gun with Tom Cruise. Looking forward to the sequel coming out.
Yeah,
sometime. Who knows? And they were both single guys in those movies, and they wore their navy whites and the chokers. They got hot chicks. I was single. I hate to say that was a deciding factor, but between going to Charleston, South Carolina, and the potential to wear that uniform, we could pass that up. Interestingly, my grandfather was a dentist on my mother's side, and he had served in World War II in the Pacific Theater on a support ship just during the war. And the opportunity to kind of follow that legacy, that's hard to pass up.
Mm-hmm.
So my plan was 3 years and get out, go back to Erie, Pennsylvania, and be a real dentist and a real civilian and all that. And wow, Charleston was fabulous. First child was born in Charleston 3 months after Hurricane Hugo, actually. So she was 3 months old when Hurricane Hugo hit. But did that, and I thought, a year on in a shore command, and I don't want to get out. I don't want to tell people that I was in the Navy, but I was never on a ship. So I did a ship tour, USS Sierra, AD-18, Dixie-class destroyer tender, and we did a Mediterranean Sea deployment. 6 months over there. That was really neat. I got to see things as a farm boy from Pennsylvania. Back in the day, you needed a National Geographic to see that. No Google, none of that stuff. So that was really neat. And I said, I'm gonna stick around for a little bit longer. Did another short tour, and about 6 months into that, I said, I had an awful lot more fun on the ship. So I got lucky, and I got ordered to the Wisconsin. And I guess the rest is history. 30 years later, 15 duty stations, 11 PCS moves, and the great opportunities that our Navy affords all of us, however we make the use of those things. Yeah.
Outstanding, Matt. Thank you very much. So one of the things that I was thinking about was when I was flipping through the cruise book, there's a picture of you. You're in your gas mask, because it was Desert Storm, of course, or Desert Shield. And the biggest threat that the coalition forces were looking at were the dirty bombs and the chemical biological warfare that might have happened. So we went everywhere on board Battleship Wisconsin with our gas masks. But in the cruise book, there's a picture of you, Matt, with your gas mask on, and there's a patient here in the chair, and he's wearing a mask also.
Not unlike yourself, right?
Not unlike myself. But it prompted me to think about what happens. You're doing your work. It's just a normal work day, and then all of a sudden, general quarters, all hands man your battle stations. What do you do?
That's I'm getting flashbacks. That's such a good question, and you're absolutely right. and I kidded with my wife. I said, I wore my gas mask more regularly than clean underwear. Because you go nowhere without that. You go to the shower, it is right sand outside your shower with you. And if you remember, the other thing that we had were our 2 injectables, the 2-PAM chloride and all that, for those potential chemical attacks. So that was interesting. The cruise book picture. We had a great group of dental technicians here. Melvin Pfeiffer and Cazares was a good kid, and Professor Anthony. So we had a really good bunch of folks, and we got along well, and they liked to lighten things up a little bit. So that whole thing was completely and totally staged, just as a fun sort of a picture. How do you do dentistry through a mask? And the answer is you don't. But the other thing that's interesting, I was a dentist in the Navy, but I'm a naval officer first. So you have to do more than just your profession. And we both know those are called collateral duties and collateral assignments and all that. So some of those are pretty fun. One of them was sports and athletic. I was a sports and athletic officer, which was really cool. I was co-captain of the volleyball team, so we got to go and play in the desert against the Army and volleyball things. And we had the holiday sports event where we invited all of the other ships to send their boxers and their wrestlers, and we had festivities here. So those kinds of things are neat. And then there's some serious stuff. So when we do go to general quarters, what does the dentist do? Well, dental officers, medical officers, nurse corps officers, we all go to what's called C4, Combat Casualty Care Course. And we learn how to do venous cut downs and a whole bunch of life-saving measures that are really very, very intense. Because when you're the only show in town, you're the only show in town. So we had, as you remember, Keith, one physician, one physician's assistant, and 2 dentists on board. And we had 4 battle dressing stations. So when the ship goes to general quarters and you start securing our watertight hatches, for anyone that is a casualty from whatever that might be, a steam line break or falling down a ladder break or whatever, or taking an incoming round, there's 4 areas of the ship that you can take those casualties. And I was the aft battle dressing station down on Broadway, and I had my team of stretcher bearers down there. We did training and all those sorts of things. So, yes, I was very proud to be the ship's dentist, but I was even more proud to be an integral part of the wardroom and the functioning of the ship through a versatility and a variety of collateral duties. You mentioned general quarters. So the 1MC, and we had a couple of those in here. Just behind us is the room that has X-rays in it. So that would be the room that I would do surgeries in and root canals that you need to take X-rays. I don't want to bore anybody, but we're going to throw a couple of dental terms out there. It worked out really well in finding Nemo. They had a little fish tank there and a little guy in there. So anyhow, so I was had a patient come in pain, and he had acute periordicular periodontitis, irreversible pulpitis. What's that mean, doctor? It means he needs a root canal. So top right molar, and top right molar has 3 roots, but frequently 4 canals. So I got in there and I found the 3 roots, and I found 3 main canals, and okay, you'll be good, we'll get you back in another time, and so off goes the emergency patient back to regular patients. Next day he comes back still having pain. So I'm in there and I go, oh, the dreaded MB2. Any dentists out there are going to appreciate that, right? MB2. Any non-dentists are going to go, dude, move on. Okay. So I'm looking for MB2, trying to get in there, and the smallest file we had was a number 10 file, and really I needed a 6 or 8 to find it, and I'm in there, and found it. And I'm like, oh, let me get that nasty nerve out of there. Then the 1MC comes on. General quarters, all hands man your battle stations, inbound vampire. General quarters, all hands in, inbound vampire. And I looked at my assistant, and I looked at my patient, and I said, can you imagine this? Here we are, 4 miles off the coast of Clay. We are in combat operations, and they forget to say this is a drill. And the 1MC came back on again and said, inbound vampire, this is not a drill. Woo! So changed the whole scenario there, pulled everything out, ripped the patient up, threw him out the door, and off to the battle dressing station we went with our gas masks on our legs and our 2-PAM chloride injections on the other legs. So Not quite as dramatic, and probably not going to be Disney worthy. I don't think that's going to make it into the
No.
next Nemo.
Probably not. Probably not.
But a good memory, sort of.
Sort of. Sort of. I remember that. I remember that very well.
And we had, I believe that the PAO actually had video of the tracer fire going between our stacks. And that's where we ended up getting the combat action ribbon because of that. So,
Okay, there it is.
yeah, yes, there is. Yeah. So, fun stuff, fun stuff.
Fun stuff. Yeah, you have to have a sense of humor with this job, that's for sure. So you told us a little bit about being at your battle dressing station for general quarters, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the station itself and what you were actually responsible for there?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. And or you wouldn't have asked me. So you have a set group of people that are assigned to that. So when you go to general quarters, every sailor on the ship has a responsibility to be in a specific place. We had 15 people down there. I was the only officer. We had a senior chief independent duty corpsman down there. And we had a lot of undesignated sailors who were just there to do what they are directed to do. Before you go to general quarters, the real deal, you practice, and you practice, and you practice. So you always go there and you practice engineering casualties, you practice navigation casualties, you practice gunfire casualties, and there is always a point to practice. Practice makes perfect, so you're practicing it all the time. So whenever we would go to general quarters, the senior chief and myself would have a group of learning objectives. So, for example, the one time we were teaching non-military people, how do you place a tourniquet? How do you know when it's tight enough? When do you let it off? The next general quarters, it would be splinting a leg. How do you splint a leg? Where do you put the belt? Where do you put the boards? Next one would be loading a patient onto a stretcher. How do you load the patient onto a stretcher? And of course, we had oxygen in there, and we always made sure that our inventory was fresh and that nothing was expired, because you don't know what you're going to be called on to do back here. So we had some good drugs. We never had any missing good drugs, which were really good. Yeah. But all the things that you would need for an emergency surgery, tracheotomy, or to stabilize a patient until you get out of whatever combat situation you're in, and then you can medevac them or get them to our own hospital on the ship. So lots and lots of practice. Each and every general quarters that was a planned event, we would have a set learning objective and a script, and we would go through that. We would actually have some of our corpsmen dress up and do what's called moulage, so a little bit more high-tech than Heinz Ketchup, but kind of Heinz Ketchup stuff. And we went to that training, so we are not scared by that. I'm seeing blood all the time, so that's a good thing. But for the undesignated seamen and stretcher bearers and stuff, they don't see that stuff all the time. So we practice with them, and we got some really good actors, and they're screaming and yelling. And Keith, how old were you when you were on board? We were young kids.
I was 20 years old when I was here.
I had hair, remember?
Yeah,
yeah. My head.
And it was all colored and everything. It was really cool. But I was thinking about that all the training that we did in Gitmo. That word that I haven't heard in quite some time. The
moulage.
Moulage. Yes, that's right. I haven't heard that in many, many years. But I remember very well. I was at Gitmo. I was tasked to be a casualty, and I was laying there, and I had my guts out all over the place, and I'm screaming for my mother. And
nice.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, and you practice and you sweat in peace so you don't bleed in war. And preparation is what it's all about. And I'm really, really, really proud to be associated with the Navy because of the seriousness that they take everything, and training in particular. And it's a dangerous world out there, and ships are a dangerous place. And a mishap can happen anytime, as we saw back in the Forest Ball fires. Just recently out in San Diego with the large tech amphib that caught fire there.
Von Hammer,
yeah. And so, what we do, forever vigilant. We need to be trained, puts a great deal of time, effort, and money into training and keeping things professional. And I kid, some of my patients are now in-serve officers, and it's us and them, and they used to be us and now they're them when you're an in-serve. But they take their job seriously because they have to, because that's all part of being ready to go into harm's way and to protect the freedoms and the liberty that we enjoy in this country. Look at where you are, where you came from. Look where I am and where I came from. And if society had not given me those opportunities, I'd probably be picking apples still on the old apple farm up there in Erie, Pennsylvania, which was a good life. Erie was, oh, by the way, Erie, Pennsylvania, the summer there, both weeks, fabulous. Oh, yeah. My goodness gracious. I mentioned that my grandfather was a Navy dentist. And it's interesting. I have 3 children, all born in different states. Charleston, Virginia. Actually, my daughter, Madison, was born here in Virginia when I was just had left. We had just decommissioned. And my wife and I didn't want to know the sex of the child, but I had my wife convinced that because I was on WisKy, that we were going to name the boy either Jack Daniels Pommer or Evan Williams Pommer or George Dickel Pommer, and we had it all picked out. And out comes a girl. There's no female WisKy names.
Yeah.
So her name is Madison. State capital of Wisconsin. Pretty cool. Fun facts you don't tell.
Very cool.
My oldest daughter is a Navy dentist now, stationed in Quantico, and my son is a Navy dentist, and he will be going to the Harry S. Truman this summer, which his sister did 2 years ago. So brother and sister will both serve on the Harry S. Truman. They wanted to come to Wisconsin, but again, we got lucky. They didn't.
Yeah. So that's really neat. That's a real family tradition, Navy dentistry.
As it turns out, yes, it is.
Yeah.
My wife and I encouraged them to find a profession that people didn't start out by saying, didn't take this personally, but I hate the dentist. But kids being rebellious as they are, they didn't listen to us. So yeah, those acorns fell really close to the tooth fairy tree. So, again, Keith, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you humoring the old tooth fairy and letting me come on board here and recall some of these memories from the distant past. And I'm a volunteer, and a number of people volunteer to come on the ship and share things. But the maintenance of the ship, I mean, we're talking 887 feet 3 inches, right? 37 feet underwater, 9 decks down, 12 decks up. This is a 21-story building. It's made out of metal and it's floating in salt water. So there's got to be a lot of maintenance that goes with that. The city of Norfolk, I'm sure plays a huge role in it, as does Nauticus and all. But folks that are watching this and thinking, gosh, I hope that we can preserve this for the future. How do you go about contributing or being a member of Nauticus? I mean, the COVID-19 thing going on now, what can they do if they come here?
Sure. Again, really good
wait a
question.
minute, the interviewee's asking the interviewer questions.
But it's a really good question, and it's not really something that we get into too much on our virtual adventures, but I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So, to volunteer, to get involved in that capacity, you can go to our website, www.nauticus.org, click on a link that says to become a volunteer, and then there are a whole bunch of different choices as far as volunteering. You can volunteer here on the battleship, and you can volunteer in either operations where you're engaging with guests and doing the things that you and I are doing right now, talking about the battleship itself, or you can be in maintenance where you can volunteer your time to help with the restoration and preservation of the ship itself, which is quite important considering it's a piece of metal floating in salt water.
So someone could go through some training and talk to patrons and visitors on the ship. Someone who's maybe a little bit shyer but still wants to contribute could lend the sweat of their brow in helping to maintain and actually get their hands on a battleship and help preserve it.
Yes. Wow. Yes. And we're really lucky as far as our location because we have a lot of prior Navy and still active duty that volunteer on both sides. I have volunteer Navy electricians that come when they can because of COVID and HPCon Charlie and all that stuff. There's a lot of active duty sailors that can't come out right now and volunteer, but there's a lot of previous Navy, and they come and they lend their time and their expertise. And I also have a lot of people that aren't. They have no background in the Navy whatsoever. They just want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And like you were saying, 887 feet, 3 inches long is a pretty big part of something that they necessarily don't have a background in. But everybody here is crew and family, and we treat them as such. And volunteers are actually the backbone of the work that we get to do here. But Matt, I want to thank you for your for coming today and helping me with this. And I want to thank you all for joining us today on our virtual adventure. I look forward to speaking to you again real soon from someplace else on board the ship.
You know, there is something I've been wondering about. What's behind the mask?
Oh, we don't really want to go in there. I don't think. I'm good.
I came prepared, so
I'm really good, man.
And it's also a very, very dangerous place to work. Sure.
I'm gonna ask this question, then you can get into.
Stealing your thunder?
No, you're not stealing it. I'm just trying to.
Is everybody as boring as me?
I love my job. I really do. This is the best thing about my job.
So part of the beauty of being a dentist is most of the time you got stuff in the patient's mouth. You got a rubber dam, you got suction, you got your drill, you got your hands, your assistant's hands, and they can't talk. So you get to talk. They don't ask questions. They can't. You can tell bad jokes. They don't get to. I mean, for example, what's the worst place you can take a dog? Flea market. What do you call a dog that doesn't bark? Hush puppy. French fries aren't made in France. They're made in Greece. I mean, see, nothing. Unbelievable.